The bread satisfying your hunger right now used to be someone's body. That's what he said, straight-faced, at a dinner table, surrounded by his closest friends. And not one of them left the room. But to understand why they stayed, and why that sentence still echoes in the lives of billions, you have to feel the weight of that night. Not as a painting in a museum, as a room full of sweat, lamb fat, and fear. Jerusalem is packed. The streets are barely passable. Somewhere around 250,000 people have poured into a city that normally holds a fraction of that. They've come from every corner of the Jewish world, carrying animals, carrying children, carrying the same story their grandparents carried. The Passover story. Escape, freedom, a God who sided with the enslaved and broke the chains of empire. Every family, every table in the city is about to reenact that night. The night their ancestors fled Egypt so fast the bread didn't have time to rise. That's the flatbread. That's the wine in the cups. It's not decoration. It's muscle memory. Centuries of it. And right in the middle of that annual rehearsal, in a rented upper room on a hill, one man is about to hijack the whole thing. Not with a sword, with a loaf and a cup. His name, of course, is Jesus. And the meal he's about to serve will outlast the temple, outlast the Roman Empire, outlast every dynasty that will try to claim it. But none of that has happened yet. Right now, it's just a room. 13 men, a table set low to the ground, and a tension so thick you could cut it with a bread knife. Here's what most people miss about the Passover meal. It wasn't just a dinner. It was theater, a script, refined over generations. You eat the flatbread because your ancestors didn't have time for yeast. You drink from 4 cups of wine, each one tied to a different promise of rescue from the old texts. Being brought out, being delivered, being redeemed, being taken as God's own people. You dip herbs. You tell the story out loud. Children ask rehearsed questions. Everyone has a role. Jesus knew that script better than anyone at the table. He'd performed it every year of his life. So when he picked up the flatbread and said something that wasn't in the script, the room would have gone quiet in a way that's hard to imagine now. He broke the bread, held it up, and told them it was his body. Think about that for a second. You're sitting at a ritual meal you've eaten since childhood. The words are familiar. The flavors are familiar. And suddenly the host changes the lines. He doesn't replace the bread with something else. He pours new meaning into the same object. The bread is still bread, but now it's also him. Then he took the cup. Wine had already soaked into every corner of Passover worship. The temple alone consumed thousands of liters during the festival. Wine meant joy. Wine meant divine promise, and Jesus held it up and called it his blood, the blood of a new agreement between God and humanity. Now, blood language wasn't new. The Old Covenant, the deal between God and Israel, had been sealed with blood too. Animal blood, splashed on altars, marking door frames the night of the escape from Egypt. Blood meant the deal was serious. Blood meant someone paid a cost. But Jesus wasn't pointing to a lamb. He was pointing to himself. And that move, that quiet, deliberate rewriting, was the hinge of the whole evening. But the room didn't have time to process it, because the next thing he said turned the mood inside out. One of you is going to hand me over. 12 men, 12 faces, and every single one of them asked the same question. Is it me? Am I the one? The Greek word used in the oldest manuscripts for tadiurtor aninai reader betrays appears 5 times across the different accounts, hammering the point. This isn't a footnote. It's the emotional center of the meal, trust cracking like dry clay, each man looking at his neighbor, wondering. And here's the part that complicates the simple version you may have heard. The one who does it, Judas, isn't a cartoon villain. Only one account even mentions the money. Others leave his motives open. Some modern scholars think he wasn't greedy at all. They think he wanted Jesus to fight, to start the revolt, to become the military liberator the Passover story seemed to promise. If that's true, Judas didn't betray Jesus for silver. He betrayed him for a future that never came. That kind of disappointment is harder to paint than greed, and it's much closer to the kind of betrayal most people actually experience. Not the cold calculation of an enemy, but the shattered expectations of someone who wanted something different from you. The candle on the table flickers. The bread is broken. The wine is poured. And one man at the table is already planning his exit. But something else happened that night. Something only one of the 4 accounts remembers. And it's stranger than the bread, stranger than the wine, stranger even than the betrayal. Jesus got up from the table, took off his outer robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, and started washing feet. You have to feel how wrong that would have looked. In the ancient world, washing a guest's feet was the job of the lowest servant in the household, not the host, definitely not a rabbi, definitely not someone you believed might be sent by God. The social order had rules, and this broke every one of them. It wasn't just humble, it was upside down. And it wasn't part of the Passover script. There's no foot washing in the traditional meal. This was an addition, a statement made with water and cloth instead of words. When he finished, he told them the point. If I did this for you, you do this for each other. Leadership doesn't mean sitting at the head of the table. It means kneeling at someone else's feet. That image, the leader as servant, would ripple outward through centuries of monastic rules, church orders, and political philosophy. But in the moment, it was just wet feet and confused silence. Now step back from the room. Zoom out. Because the most remarkable thing about this meal isn't what happened during it. It's what happened after. Within 25 years, a man named Paul is writing to a small community of believers in Corinth, Greece. And he's quoting the words of that meal almost word for word. This is the earliest written account we have. Earlier than the Gospels themselves. And he's not inventing something new, he's passing on what he received. Which means the ritual was already in motion, already traveling, already being repeated in rooms far from Jerusalem before anyone sat down to write the story. By the end of the 1st century, a short manual of early Christian practice appears. It contains prayers over broken bread and a shared cup. The language is simple. The structure is recognizable. The meal is becoming a ritual. A generation later, a philosopher named Justin describes Sunday gatherings in Roman house churches. Hundreds of people. Bread and wine shared. Readings from the memoirs of the apostles. The table from the upper room has multiplied. It's in basements and courtyards across the empire. And here's where you might expect the story to settle. A meal becomes a rite. The rite becomes tradition. Tradition becomes routine. But that's not quite what happened. Because in the centuries that followed, the meal didn't just survive, it fought. Eastern churches used risen bread, thick, chewy loaves, insisting that life and resurrection belong in the ritual. Western churches used flat, unleavened wafers, tying themselves back to the Passover bread. Neither side was wrong. Both were choosing which part of the meal's meaning to emphasize. And that argument, what the bread should be, what the wine becomes, who can share it and who can't, has never really stopped. By the Middle Ages, the meal had leapt from table to wall. Artists painted it. Nearly 200 surviving frescoes from that era show the scene. And in the Renaissance, the number exploded. Hundreds of paintings. Almost half of them placed Jesus at the table with a cross or an altar visible behind him, fusing the meal with the sacrifice it pointed toward. The table had become an altar. The dinner had become a sacrament. And the man who washed feet had become the center of the largest shared ritual in human history. But here's a question worth sitting with. Did the meal create the community, or did the community create the meal? Some scholars argue the whole narrative was shaped after the fact, that early Christians built the story backward to justify what they were already doing. And they have a point. The 4 accounts don't fully agree on the date. They don't agree on the details. The sequence shifts from one telling to the next. But here's what's strange. If you were inventing a founding meal from scratch, you probably wouldn't include the betrayal. You wouldn't show your leader on his knees with a towel. You wouldn't admit that every person at the table doubted themselves. The messiness of the story is, in a way, its strongest argument for authenticity. Clean myths don't have wet feet and broken trust. Real memories do. And that tension between polished ritual and raw memory is what keeps the meal alive. It's not a museum piece. It's a living argument about what sacrifice means, what service looks like, and whether a loaf of bread can hold more than flour and water. Every story has a next chapter. If this one opened something in you, the kind of question that sits quietly behind your ribs and doesn't leave, subscribe. The next story is waiting, and it goes deeper than you think. So the next time you see bread broken at a table, any table, remember that room, the crowded city, the flatbread that wasn't in the script, the cup that rewrote a covenant, the wet towel on the floor, 13 men, one of them already leaving, and a meal that refused to end.